What is up, guys? Takes a selfie here, and today I'm here to do an analysis on Oboro, which, if any of you guys have been paying attention to the Cipher community for the last like 2 sets, I'm sure you guys know what this card is all about. But I figured that I would try to do a analysis on how this card works, what are its synergies, etc, etc. I'm pretty much gonna be trying to break down everything about this card. Hopefully some newer players can get a grasp on what this card is like and how to handle it, and maybe some other players can maybe pick up on a few things here, or learn the matchup, or learn the deck specifically. Anyways, I have this split up into 7 different sections. The first one, I'm just going to talk about Oboro, just the card for a second, for people that don't know what it does yet. Start with the 4-3 first, because this is actually very, very important to address first. The 4-3 has a skill that reads, when an ally Oboro moves, you can level up that unit with this card from your retreat, but you have to pay 1 white bond to do that. So, let's say that this Oboro right here is on the front line, it moves into back line. This allows me to use this skill right here to promote into Oboro 4-3, which is very, very good, especially if you can hit it on like turn 1 or turn 2. You are a base 70 that's ready to go, and it can lead into some pretty nice situations, especially because you're only paying 1 white bond too, not even 2 white bonds, but just 1 white bond. Other than that, we did talk about how Oboro needs to move, and well, the cost one has that covered for sure. The cost one has a once per turn, quote unquote, move this untapped unit. Now, there is a weird reaction. I can't explain it fully, but you are allowed to... Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to talk about another skill of this Oboro. Makeup change. Send the top card of this unit to the retreat. So, as long as this isn't, actually, you may be able to do if this was the only unit by itself. But what you can do is if you have a stack of Oboros like this, you can get rid of this Oboro, send it back to the retreat, so you can go ahead and promote later for more card draw or whatever, right? So, you have those 3 skills. So, what you can do with this Oboro is that you can use your quote-unquote once per turn skill to move, promote, unpromote. You're getting a card draw out of this too, and then your once per turn skill actually refreshes. So, despite it saying once per turn, you can actually use it in infinite amounts as long as you class change and declass change every time you want to use it. Now, of course, it does cost a bond, but with the value you can get out of this, it can go a long, long way. And so that is the fundamental basics of Oboro. You basically just use the combination of 3 skills on your main character to move around and get a bunch of card draw. And, of course, reposition yourself if you need to, although that's not the main drawing point here. So we did talk about that. And there's one last skill I'm going to go over real quickly, is that when Oboro has an archer unit or bow unit somewhere on the field, on your side of course, you gain +10, so you become a base 80, which is very, very good. It helps you push past certain benchmarks, such as like the standard for a MC, like a 4-cost MC, is a base 70. In fact, most units without buffs are base 70. So, being able to get above that threshold is very, very good. Anyways, enough about just the Oboro herself. What synergies does she have? Well, obviously, she has some immediate class change synergies, so the prime pick here would be Frederick, and Frederick's skill is that whenever you class change, you can deploy this card from your hand. So, after flipping a bunch of bonds, you can more than likely end up with the Frederick in your hand, and then after you class change, you can also deploy Frederick. So not only are you getting free card draw, or even a or even promoting your cost 1 into the 4-3. You also get a pretty good tempo swing from Frederick here. He's a base 70. He prevents the enemy from creating the MC. There's a couple other skills here. Oh yeah. Well, this unit is in the front line. The MC cannot be moved by enemy skills. And overall, he's just very solid. He can come in, you know, get a hit in or two. And he puts on a lot of pressure in the early game. Of course, if you do want to get a bit creative or try something that's not too normal, you can also try some other class change synergies. Well, these aren't the only ones. I just thought of these two off the top of my head. Morgan can move an enemy backline every time an ally class changes, which you're doing quite often. So you have good backline control of Morgan too. And you also have Henry here. And Henry, when class changed... No, it's not even when your class changed, never mind. When you class change another unit, both players discard one card. While that may sound bad as you're deleting your own hand, it's not really. It's like a mage emblem. You're drawing a card, and then you're gonna have to discard one with Henry, while your opponent has to discard one. They don't get a single draw. So while you're going like net neutral, your opponent is going down -1, and that can lead to you discard their entire hand potentially if you have enough bonds to. While these cards aren't necessarily the greatest for Oboro's game plan all the time, there's certainly things that you could consider or maybe try it out for fun. And besides that, you also want good white cards to use. Since you can only flip white bonds, it's very important to have a lot of white bonds that you can actually spend, and therefore white units are good. Some good examples are archers. While archers also supply the +10 buff to Oboro, they also, these three in particular, bring some very important assets to the team. Kuragi can give your ally bow units +10, allowing them to hit that +70 benchmark, as I was talking about earlier. +70 is a staple, so if you can hit past that, then you're doing a good job. Kuragi can also deploy... No, he gives bows 1 range, which isn't too good. It's situational at best. But the main draw here is giving all bow allies +10. We have Takumi here. Takumi also has a Dragon Vein skill, which Dragon Vein skills are just you flip an orb and then you get an effect. And this Dragon Vein skill, at the start or end of the turn, I can't remember. Okay, it's at the start of each turn. At the start of each turn, you have to move all your allies that aren't the MC into the backline, and your opponent has to do the same too. This allows you to keep all your archers in the backline nice and safe, and where they can hit the opponent. And, you know, it's very nice. It helps keep your backline preserved, and helps to keep these two units, who are very, very good so far, from dying, and keeping them out of enemy reach. Besides that, there's also Setsuna here. She is just a, she's a cost 3, but a promotion 2, I guess you'd say. She only costs 2 to promote from her cost 1. She's just good in general. She hits base 60, which is very, very nice, because you're going to get the +10 buff from Kuragi, and that allows you to hit base 70. So Setsuna is just good overall. She's cheap, and she gets a lot of damage out. These are the 3, like, important archers that you'll need. There's another later on, but I'm going to talk about her at some other point. And then, besides these 3, you also can use ninjas, because one of the most important things about Oboro is that in order for you to class change, while you're still in this version and don't have a promotion out, is that you have to get this Oboro to the retreat. So, sometimes you have an Oboro in your hand, and you can use these ninja emblems. Oh, there's one more, sorry. You can use these ninja emblems to gain a free unit and get the Oboro into the retreat. Because whenever you get these on a support, they read, you can discard a card from your hand at the end of the battle, deploy this unit tapped. And these are pretty good. These are the main ninjas you'll see. Asuki is like, he's like a mage emblem, but you have to discard first, and you get a free unit, which is pretty good. Saizo and Kagero can summon each other, So if you summon Saizo and don't have a Kagura on the field, and you have a Kagura on the retreat, you go ahead and get 2 of these guys out, so that's some pretty good value, and then you have Elise here who can break your orb to become untapped. Not that that's too important, sometimes the extra card is nice, but I figured I would bring it up. So, yeah, these ninjas can combine well with an early game for helping Oboro get off her early game by discarding an Oboro in your hand and sending it to the retreat. And those are the main synergies that you'll see with Oboro decks. There are definitely other cards that play a huge factor, but those are the only ones I wanted to cover as of right now. I'll get to some others later though. And if you want to know about some counters for Oboro right now, there aren't really too many counters. The first one I'll talk about is this. This card is, it's Morgan, but like the Grimula version. And this says, enemy units except for the main character unable class change. So if you are playing against a non-Oboro MC, this card can prevent Oboro from using her class change skill, period, until this card is off the field. Which, of course, this is a skill that activates as soon as it's deployed. So, all they have to do is clear the Morgan. But if you can keep it alive, you can prevent the Oboro for return, which is pretty good. Although this doesn't work in the Oboro MC matchup because, as it said, it does not affect MCs. This is a very light counter, but it can be effective versus some decks, and it's not an awful tech. It's a 30 base. It's pretty decent. And then finally, the last card I wanted to talk about was Veronica. Now, Veronica here doesn't necessarily counter Oboro, but as we talked about earlier with this card here, Veronica reads, during your opponent's turn, when an enemy is deployed by the effect of a skill, you may deploy this unit from your hand, and then, if this unit was summoned using Princess of Death, which was the skill I talked about earlier, choose one enemy and tap them until the end of battle. That enemy cannot be untapped. So, if your opponent does play Frederick, you can either tap the Oboro or the Frederick. It just depends on the situation. And Veronica's a pretty decent answer, and she's really good against a lot of other decks, so I definitely recommend running Veronica in your deck if you can fit it, or you might even want to make room for her too. And other than that, there isn't too much else you can actually do versus Oboro. This is why she's such a dominating threat in the metagame at the moment. Although, you can do some other things to help, such as not attacking Oboro until she has her 4th rain to retreat, because attacking Oboro means more supports are being built, and more of a chance that this card will be given to her. And that is not good, because as soon as she gets this card, she can go off, and she has a really explosive play as soon as she gets it too. That's if she has a couple of bonds already, because then that allows her to spend all those bonds and refill her hand. So, yeah, you can just try and not attack Oboro until you need to. Obviously, some decks can't afford that, but if you are playing something like Control, then go ahead. Now I want to talk about the decks real quickly. Well, not real quickly, I'll go over them a little bit. Here is the Oboro MC list. I think this is Meatloaf's list. Yeah. I've actually... Hold on real quick. I need to fix this. That was not meant to happen. Anyways, yeah. So, I believe this is Meatloaf's list. And we've already gone over some of the synergies here. You have your 8 copies of Oboro. You have your Frederick. You have your Takumi, your Setsuna, and your Kuragi. And then you also have some other cards here, like Queen Noka. Queen Noka is very, very good. She is a flip 2. You can summon a lance or a bow unit that is cost 4 or lower. So that allows you to fish for your Takumi or your Kuragi, or even your Frederick if you need to. And it can become a huge tempo play as well. She's also a bow unit, so she benefits from Kuragi and has T range, which is pretty good. You have, what is it, Kana? Now, I didn't go over Kana, but this is also another very, very good card for Oboro, as Oboro can attack mid-turn, or after action phase, or in it, sorry. And you can accelerate your bonds even more after bond phase, so sometimes you only have like one bond in play, and you don't want to flip it because then Oboro will be stuck in the back line. But you can use Kana to get 2 bonds, so you can move back and then forth again and get 2 draws. Overall, ramp is just very, very good in this deck. It benefits a lot from it. Sometimes it's kind of hard to look at it, but essentially you're getting neutral value out of it. And more bonds, so that's probably a plus. And finally, the only other interesting card here is Keldori. She's just a bow unit with flyer. She's okay. You know, while attacking a cost 3 or higher unit, she gains plus 10, so she can become base 50. But she's not that bad. She's okay. Other than that, it's also very important to go over attack emblems. So, all these cost 1 archers have a skill called Attack Emblem, which gives plus 20 attack on offense. Primarily, they are on characters that are traditionally like fighters or mercenaries, and those characters are also traditionally 10 supports. But archers, on the other hand, are 20 supports and also have the skill, which means instead of being a plus 30 on attack, these guys are a plus 40 on attack. So, when you're getting hit by an archer emblem, it is like insane. It can be a lot of damage. It can allow something even as weak as Keldori to even hit their opponents. And, you know, it also helps against MCs that are even bigger than like base 70 or base 80. And overall, this is the fundamental Oboro deck. If you want to practice this deck, definitely go for this one. I'll leave a screenshot in the description if you want to check this out later. But yeah, this is basically the list. You just tempo out, you draw a lot, blah 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 blah. We also have a couple other decks here. We have Maui. So if you're running Oboro as the main MC, you can still run it in a lot of decks because this card is just so good. It's a 1-for-1 that also procs many other things. Now Maui here, Maui can recycle your bonds. He gives a plus 10 boost to all your allies. So he can allow your archers to hit plus 10 even, or get a plus 10 even when Karagi's out. And he can cycle your bonds back into your hand after they've been flipped. And even deploy Oboro mid-turn. So yeah, that's pretty good. If you somehow end up drawing Oboro after deployment phase, you can also use Maui to deploy it too, which is very good. Outside of that, it's pretty much the same. Just a newsflash, I haven't tested this list. I'm just gonna go by what other people say and say that this list is okay. It doesn't have the Takumi 4-3, but with stuff like Frederick or Oboro not being like the main MC, I think it's fine because you kind of want these guys up front to be dealing damage or sponging some hits, right? Anyways, there is 2 more lists I want to go over. Here's the Lucina list, featuring the ninja synergies from before. Lucina as an MC can boost your allies tremendously. So combine that with a bunch of ramp, and by a bunch of ramp, I mean literally 12 copies of Dragon Emblem, Oboro to draw a bunch of cards, and ninja emblems to get those Oboros into their treat. You have a killer combo. Not to mention that 3-2 Lucina right here. Okay, so her skill is that when another ally class changes, you can discard a card and add a Lucina to your hand from the retreat. So if you are missing your 5x cost promotion in hand, you can class change the Oboro, discard a card, and get the Lucina to your hand, so you'll have this ready for a future turn. Not to mention, you're also running a lot of ninjas, so you can spam the board with these weak 30 cost, which is like a downgrade from the archers, but in Lucina, they're okay, because you can deploy a lot more of these guys, get a lot more of these guys on the field, and then just Lucina buff them to become base 100 or something insane like that. This deck has definitely fallen out of favor ever since Oboro became, like, the best Oboro deck, I should say. But while this deck had its time to spotlight, I still think it's very fun, and it still has its own niche in the metagame. Anyways, and then we have one more deck here. I kind of takes things to an extreme here. We combine the Old Angry Ike shell with Oboro. Now, Old Angry Ike used to run a bunch of ninjas, and you still do. They're very, very expendable when you are attacking with your base 100 and you have to sacrifice some stuff. But if you also add Oboro, you can add a card draw and more tempo in Frederick, which allows you to progress your game plan and be even more offensive, allowing you to kill your opponent before you kill yourself, which was a primary problem with Ike before, in that he just couldn't handle his own weight sometimes, and you could outstall him. But with Oboro, that definitely accelerates his gameplay and makes his opponent have to react or play even better around it. Sometimes you can just overwhelm them with the simple base 100 board clears and all the ninjas on the field. And those are all the Oboro decks I thought I'd bring up. There are definitely some other Oboro decks out there, and you can probably make some on your own, but I just figured I would bring those up. And yeah, I just want to talk about how you can play around Oboro, or what you can do with Oboro now. So, while Oboro is like the best deck in the game, there's still some things that you can do to enhance your game plan. It's not entirely Oboro is going to steamroll you. Like, for example, I brought this up earlier, but in the early game, when this Oboro is not in a retreat, you can still play around it by not attacking the Oboro, unless if you have to. Like, if you're playing a deck that relies on getting bonds early through Dragon Emblems, then it's probably fine. But if you're playing other decks that don't necessarily need a rush, you can probably just wait and not attack the Oboro. And not attacking the Oboro means less chances of the 4-3 being the retreat, and less likely that they'll be able to promote. Of course, they could also have the Oboro in hand and they could dodge anyways, but, you know, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. In controlled matchups, you can actually outvalue Oboro. It may sound insane that a card that can gain 5 cards in a single turn can be outvalued, but if your opponent does spend their bonds too recklessly and they dump their hand too much, the control deck can actually outvalue Oboro, because then Oboro loses all her power, and she can't really recover from card draw, unless if she stalls and doesn't use her bonds, but at that point, you're just like a basic generic, like, base 70, base 80 MC, right? And you pretty much lose everything special about you. So you can try to outlast Oboro. This is what you do, control matchups, and some other MCs can get away with it. It's not a game plan that's in reach for a lot of MCs, but it's still a very important thing to consider. Another great thing is that when you're playing in the Oboro match, you need to figure out who your targets are, right? Because while Oboro is threatening, she is only one card, and you want to get rid of the other dangerous threats back here if you can. So those threats would mainly be the Dragon Vein users in Kuragi and Takumi. Takumi disallows your backline from being in front, and basically keeps the rest of Oboro's backline safe, right? So if you get rid of Takumi, then you can start using other movement tools to move the rest of the guys up and finish them off from there. Another guy you want to kill is Kuragi. Well, the deck still has a lot of firepower, thanks to all the attack emblems and the 30 sports within the deck. If you get rid of Kuragi, some of that consistency can go down, because as a lot of these backline archers are no longer base 70, but now a base 60. So, getting rid of those 2 Dragon Vein users are very, very good. If you do want to turn off those skills, you can sometimes do that by using cards such as like Fae or Grail, which can actually target the orbs. So you may want to target the face-up orbs, so you don't have to deal with the Takumi removal, or not the removal, but the Takumi moving enemies into the backline. Just some small things to consider. And then you also want to be very, very aware if your opponent makes a misplay with the Oboro. While that sounds like generic advice, sometimes the Oboro will draw into Frederick, while moving to the backline, and then flip a bond to deploy Frederick. At this point, if you have a Veronica in your hand, you can deploy Veronica, tap Oboro, and then Oboro is stuck in the backline, and that ruins her from getting any more card draw for the rest of that turn, as well as blocking yourself from attack. So just be very aware if the Oboro player tries to choke. You can also do a similar thing with Queen Noka. So Hinoka also is a summoning effect that triggers Veronica. And if Oboro hasn't done all removing yet and still has bonds left, you might want to be wary of that. Those are the very, very important things that you can try to consider while you're playing against Oboro. The rest is pretty much up to matchup. I wish I could give more advice, but I hope that advice did help. But I will give you some tips if you are playing Oboro. The first off is exactly the opposite of what I just said, and that you want to be careful in making sure that you are in the front line when you deploy Frederick. Because being in the front line allows you to block these guys from being pulled forward by a force march. Because if you're back here and your only frontline unit is Frederick, and Frederick dies, all these guys are going to have to move up. And unless if you have a Kuragi and an orb ready to flip to attack, it is not going to look pleasant. Let me just say that. So just be aware of when you're summoning and where your Oboro is. And just be aware of Veronica in general, as, you know, you have 2 ways to summon. Well, you have 3 ways to summon. I forgot. Takumi can also summon, but I didn't mention that. Just be aware of when Veronica summons, and try to play around it if you can. Sometimes you may want to attack first with all your powerful guys, so you attack with the Oboro, Frederick, and Hinoka first before you flip 2, and then the Veronica comes out and taps maybe like a Takumi or something. Remember that you can also promote twice in one move. So basically, if you have 3 bonds and you want to use all 3 of your bonds, you can move back. You can promote twice if you have 2 copies of this card in the retreat. Because technically, you can use any amount of Oboro to class change. I'm sorry, I'm losing my words here. And so you can class change, like, you can class change up to 4 times if you really, really wanted to with this card. And with that allows you to move and manage your bonds a bit more efficiently. So if you have 2, you can move back, draw 2, and then move up and only draw 1. And that can help you in some occasions. Just another nice thing to be aware of. And finally, keep in mind that your tap flyers also move Oboro. So this is like the opposite circumstance where you only have 1 bond and you're in the front line but you want to draw. If you have a tap flyer such as Hinoka or Kaeldori, you can tap, move Oboro, and then Oboro can move herself back up and promote and gain that +1 card. And then there's also Queen Noka. Hinoka is a really, really good card. In fact, it's your best 5-drop. It's one of the best 5-drops in the game, sorry. It allows you to get a lot of tempo in a similar way that Oboro does with Frederick. So make sure or not necessarily make sure, but you may want to be aware of how many bonds you have left. Because if you have 2 bonds ready for Hinoka, then you're probably in a good spot, especially on turn 5. And yeah, sometimes you may want to hold out on drawing so you can use that Queen Noka to summon a Takumi or Kuragi in the backline and put out even more damage than you would with that extra card draw. Anyways, that's all I have to say about Oboro. I hope this little mini analysis helped. And if you guys want to see me do this for other characters or other cards, go ahead and tell me in the comment section down below. Anyways, I've been Takes Selfie, and I'll see you guys later. Deuces.